Thank you for joining us today on Positively Charged Biz. We are here to motivate, inspire, and support our listeners as they write their life stories. We are a proud founding member of the Real Disrupt Podcast Collaborative, and you can check out more awesome podcasts at realdisrupt.com. Hey everyone, I hope you are having a positive and productive day. I am so excited about our guest today. She is going to not only inspire you, but she is going to show you that once we accept ourselves for who we are, and we will step into complete fulfillment. I would like to introduce you all to Dr. Andrea Pennington. She is an integrative physician, acupuncturist, meditation, and a #1 international best-selling author and a Tedx speaker. Dr. Andrea helps people to build resilience, reclaim vitality, and thrive despite the inevitable trauma and drama that life brings. Fueled by her extensive study of age management medicine, plant-based nutrition, positive psychology, and neuroscience inspired by biohacking, Dr. Andrea leads a team of health professionals on an online media platform, Innate Vitality. Dr. Andrea's latest book, The Real Selflove Handbook, includes her proven 5-step framework. Dr. Andrea's most recent TED Talk explores the wind path that she took to escape depression and arrive at unconditional self-acceptance. Dr. Andrea, we are so excited to have you with us. And on Positively Charged Biz, we like to start at the beginning. So please tell us about your journey to becoming a self-love champion.
Well, first, thank you very much for having me. My journey, believe it or not, starts in my childhood. Like a lot of people you know today, I grew up with a divorced family, and it impacted me in terms of my own confidence in speaking up and going after my dreams. I had sort of these dual influences. My father always pushing for education, going that secure path of get an education, get a job, you'll be safe with a pension. And my mother really accepted my more artistic side. I grew up singing, performing in theater, playing in the band, but I did feel this sort of tension between go follow in the footsteps of my mom and become a doctor versus being an artist. And I did eventually decide to become a doctor, as you mentioned in the intro. And I got to a point in my 20s where I was really feeling kind of low moods. And when I got to med school, the low moods just really dipped into depression. A lot of people experience depression when they go to med school. It's an intense environment. But I realized that I was suppressing a part of me. And it is the artistic side. And when I left med school and got into my residency, the same thing happened. I was so focused on getting through the residency, working nearly 100 hours a week. I didn't have time for the extracurricular artistic things. But I realized when the depression started coming back that I had to balance, left brain and right brain with being very analytical. I love the practice of medicine. I love studying all of this neuroscience, like you mentioned, but I had to balance it with honoring who I really am. And so that's my personal journey. And in the first few years of having a medical practice, I noticed the same thing was happening with a lot of my medical patients. So even though I was taught to look at disease, in this very sort of boxed way, studying Chinese medicine and being very in tune with my own journey, I recognized that some of my patients were also denying their true path, or they were, hiding anger, or there were things that were unhealed and unresolved in their childhoods that were showing up in their health and in their relationships. And so I realized that in order to really help my patients, I had to work on self-love. And that's how I got to where I am today, being a self-love champion.
Wow, what a story. I love that. And to be quite honest, I think every person in the world probably feels that way, right? I think we all grow up where as children, we have it all, right? Looking through life through a child's eyes, we're limitless, right? We can go out and we can sing and we can dance, but we can also sit and we can do our schoolwork. But once we get to adulthood, we are, here's your path, right? You have to go in this direction because otherwise you will not meet all of the dreams and criteria. But yet by giving up a piece of yourself, you don't have that self-love. So, okay, so now you're on your journey, right? You've discovered this and you've actually realized that people's health and relationships are being negatively affected by suppressing some of their inner traits of themselves. Yeah. Okay. So now what do? You start studying Chinese medicine, it sounds like, and you start diving into this. How do you marry the two? How do you bring together the medicine and the other component?
It really came all together when I started studying trauma.
Oh.
And how to help people heal from trauma. Now, I didn't have a particularly traumatic background, but we now know that growing up in a divorced household, that impacts, depending on your age, that impacts your brain, your nervous system, and other organ systems. And so it's like a stress, it's like a traumatic event, even though it's not, what we might consider the terrible abuse. And that's what I noticed with my patients. And so when I noticed that people had these adverse childhood experiences, that's literally what they're called, ACEs. These adverse childhood experiences set us up for future challenges with emotional and physical health issues. And so I started doing trauma work and trauma recovery to help my patients who had addiction, they had eating disorders, they had other challenges, but underlying all of it was very often one of these adverse childhood experiences or full outright trauma. And so once you really get into being trauma trained, you realize that, of course, we're holistic beings. It requires a holistic approach. We use a lot of art therapy and psychodrama in the healing of addiction and eating disorders, for example. And so it was there that I realized that even if I wasn't treating addiction per se, or in a rehab center, I could bring elements of that to all of my patients. Because as you said, most of us were free-spirited, unless you had a really suppressive family. Right. Most of us were dreamers. We had these, visions and things we wanted to accomplish. And then, quote unquote, real life sets in and we get forced down a path or into a box. And what I realized in healing, many people need to be put back in touch with their authentic self. Many people need permission to honor who they really are. And it doesn't mean that everyone's going to turn into an artist or become an entrepreneur. But when you do tap into these aspects of yourself that are more authentic and true, wherever you show up, you will show up more whole and more balanced. And yes, some people do find that they want to ditch the conventional stuff and become an entrepreneur. And I'm all in support of that.
Awesome. Love it. So let's speak about the 5-step framework. Okay. Tell us about that and how that works and how does that build the foundation?
Yeah. So this 5-step path was part what I lived in order to get to this place of self-love. And it's also what I shared with my patients. The first step is awareness. We need to become aware of who we are by first finding out how we got programmed into who we think we are. So most of us, through the socialization process, we mold and fold ourselves to fit these various roles that are thrust upon us. So based on our upbringing, our culture, the country we're living in, our religion, even our birth order, if we're the middle child or the baby of the family, there are all these things that impact our sense of self. And because we humans in our early formative years, we want to fit in, we want to be safe, we want to be accepted, we will often downplay certain aspects of our personality or hide them or completely take on different behaviors just so that we can get along, just so that we can fit in, just so that we can avoid being bullied, teased, or abused. And so in the first phase of the cornerstone process, I want you to become aware of how you got molded and programmed to be who you are. And some of that's good. There's good programming too. So that you can also start to uncover what doesn't fit anymore. Because some of the things we adapted and adopted as young people don't fit us when we become adults. And we need to like reclaim our sense of autonomy, authority, and power. And that's when we can move into the awareness phase of like, well, who are you really? If you didn't have all that programming limiting you, what are the natural tendencies of your soul or your spiritual DNA, like I call it? What are the character traits and the values that you would truly express that are truly your own? And once you move from that awareness phase, we move into the second phase, which is all about acceptance. Now, whether you had a perfect past or not, there does come a moment where you have to be able to look on the past and accept that it's what got you to where you are today. It doesn't mean you accept that people should treat you horribly. It means that we recognize that our parents, our caregivers did the best they could with what they were given. And even if they did us wrong, we come to a point in our adulthood where we have to take responsibility for our life. So we accept that this is where we are. I got what I got. I didn't get what I didn't get. And we can then work through compassion and forgiveness. Forgiveness for others, if that's necessary. Forgiveness for ourselves, for sometimes allowing or perpetrating things. And when you get to that acceptance, you're starting to realize that this is your life. This is your free will choice to make it what you want to. And then we move into stage 3, which is all about accountability, which says, from this point forward, I choose. I choose my destiny. I choose who I'm going to be and how I'm going to show up in the world. I choose how I architect my life. I'm accountable to myself. This can be a little challenging for people, learning to set boundaries, learning to say no, and to stop showing up as that, previous people pleaser or codependent or whatever the pattern may have been. But getting out of that victim mentality in stage 3 and becoming accountable means the world is my oyster, and I'm able to do and bring all of my resources to make that happen. And then step 4 is inspired action. Because most of us have been taking action that has been driven by societal pressures, fitting into norms, oftentimes we lose that connection with our heart, our soul, or our intuition that would normally lead us in a path that is fulfilling. And so inspired action in step 4, we're really saying, okay, if I could receive
come to me, right?
wisdom, exactly, come
right.
to me. And that's literally what happens. Like, people tell me they go into meditation, they get a download, or they'll be, at the beach, and then they have this epiphany.
I'm one of those people that get that. So I completely understand that.
Yeah. So I do too. Like, I hear voices, I see visions,
me
I get feelings.
Yep.
And that's what we want to put people back in touch with. Like, if you could take inspired action, not action based on pressure or fitting in, but truly aligned with your heart and soul, what would that be? And then in step 5, it's all about appreciation. And it's about relearning to be fully present, not judging yourself based on the past, and appreciating and feeling gratitude for everything that's around you, everything that is working. Because science has shown us that if we maintain a positive energy from positive emotion, then we become more resilient, we become more resourceful, and we actually have better health and longevity. So these 5 stages were what led me to finally get rid of all of my limiting beliefs, reprogram my subconscious mind, do the inner child healing that I needed so that I could stand and fully say, I love me. And I can choose my life based on my desires and decisions instead of other people's.
Well, that's an awful lot. That is powerful. That is absolutely powerful. And I almost feel like there's an amen after all of that, because it's like, it's so powerful. A couple of things. All right. So one question I have to ask is, do you feel that women have a harder time with this than men? That's one thing I want to know.
I do. I think that for the majority of women that I have met and I work with, we have been programmed to take on certain roles, you know, these feminine stereotypes about what a woman should be or could be or can achieve. And a lot of women feel like they need permission to experience joy, to experience pleasure, to experience success. In other words, we don't automatically feel worthy of happiness and vitality and good things. Not everyone, but it is true that I do see far more women who have a challenge at arriving at this unconditional self-acceptance and self-love that we're talking about.
Why do you think that is? Is it just how we're brought into the world? Like kind of, it's just societal? Do you think that's where it starts?
I think it's reinforced by society. It starts at home, though. It starts with your family and the caretakers who are first imprinting upon your precious brain what's acceptable and what's not. And, you know, we women, we like to keep peace. Yeah. And so we do make adjustments and modifications to ourselves. And we believe that that's right. And so when you get to adulthood and someone like me comes along and tells me, you know what, you deserve self-care. You deserve timeouts. You deserve to go after your dreams. You shouldn't be last on the list if you even make it on your to-do list. You deserve love. You deserve success. You deserve to follow your dreams. It can take a little bit of retraining to get out of that old momentum.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. Another thing I was thinking about as you were speaking and kind of going through awareness and acceptance, I'm picturing that as people are going through this transition, they may have to look at who's around them, you know, whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's colleagues. You know, I could envision that there's some decisions to be made because the circle that is around you, maybe some people can't be in that circle as you're going through this. So speak a little bit about that.
It's absolutely the truth. You know, it may not be very fun to hear, but sometimes you do need to distance yourself from people who are toxic, from people who don't respect your boundaries or respect your own voice. I find that it's the most empowering thing you can do for yourself. And it's also sometimes the scariest. Yeah. Because again, we do tend to want to fit in. We want to keep the peace. We want to keep people together. And that idea, I mean, we've got millions of years of evolution impacting our brain. We are part human spirit and part human animal. And the animal part of us, you know, that mammal is a pack animal. We want to belong. Right. We want to be with our tribe. But there does come a moment where you have to find a new tribe. So the challenge is we have to get over this fear that if I leave this tribe, I'm more likely to die. And that was true for our ancestors. Right. But today, you can actually find a new family. You can find people who have the same values as you, who will respect you. And you can have a lot more love and joy and fun in your life when you do that.
Right. Absolutely. Difficult situation, but definitely something that at times you may need to look around and make a proper adjustment. Absolutely. Yeah. I love what you said about, especially as women, that sometimes it's hard to put ourselves as a priority. Sometimes you feel guilty for making yourself a priority, because it's always, we're the caregivers of everyone, you know, so sometimes it's difficult. So tell me about going through this process of self-love, you know, and meditation. You also have to touch on that, because I'm in the mortgage industry, and in our mortgage industry, boy, is it stressful. I mean, you know, it's a lot of ups and downs and ins and outs, and it's ever changing. And luckily, I'm very thankful that after, you know, many years of being in the industry, there's more and more women leaders. There's more and more women entrepreneurs within my industry. I mean, it's still swaying more to the male side, but there's definitely more emerging. And they struggle with this. You know, a lot of the ladies that I work with, they struggle with, well, I want to do it all. You know, I want to leave my mortgage company. I want to take care of the families that have entrusted me to help them with their mortgage transaction. But yet I have a husband, I have kids, I have soccer practice, I have, you know, I have church, I have community, you know, I'm trying to do it all. And I feel like I'm going to drop the ball somewhere. And the last thing on that list is themselves.
Yeah.
So what's some of the tips for that? And I know meditation is one of them. I know, give us some advice.
Well, I'm glad you bring this up, because one of the number one things that I deal with is burnout.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it is from women, it's from caregivers, and it's from entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're running some mortgage company, if you're whatever you're running, if you're not a high priority on your to-do list, you put yourself at risk of burning out. Because that feeling, that drive to try to be everywhere and do everything for everyone, we women, we're badasses. We've got 2 X chromosomes. That means we can multitask. And guess what? We can do it for a period of time, but the stress that puts on us, if we do not rest, if we don't do meditation or some sort of fitness or yoga, breath work, hydration, good nutrition, getting good sleep, and getting good sex, if we don't put that self-care stuff in there, then what we end up running the risk of is developing burnout. And that accelerates the aging process.
Mm.
It limits you from being fully present with your family and your clients and colleagues. So it's a matter of insurance. Like, as business owners, fortunately it's mandated by law. Like, you have to have, as a doctor, malpractice insurance. You've got to have licenses. You've got all these things in place. And yet, as business owners, we don't put any burnout insurance on ourselves. No. We don't actually actively take the steps that we need to. And I've seen it be incredibly destructive for so many women. And so I would say, even if it sounds like it's hard, think of it as prevention. And so any of those things that you're willing to do, adding it into your day, you bring up meditation, and of course I'm a meditation teacher, so I'm going to tell you about it. But the studies have shown that in just 8 minutes a day, I'm not saying you have to go sit in the lotus position and do this for hours. The studies have shown with just 8 minutes a day, you can lower the stress response. You can lower impulse behavior problems. If you're likely to shop too much or binge on things, it lowers irritability and anger, and it boosts the mood. So if you find it difficult to sit still and try to clear your mind, which nobody achieves a totally clear mind, so that's actually not your goal. But if you find it difficult to just sit by yourself, then even guided meditation has been shown to impact the brain. So I recommend it for everyone, because for most of the women that I know, that's what we need. We need quiet time to just sit without anything on our agenda for those 8 minutes every day.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. I started doing it about 2 years ago, and I thought to myself, I'm too busy for that. I can't possibly fit that in. And how can I quiet my mind? That was my biggest thing. I literally, how weird this is, but of course it won't be weird to you because you hear lots of things. I literally thought, what if I fail at meditation? Right? You're probably shaking your head going, oh yeah, I get it. Type A personalities, they always have to achieve greatness in everything they do. But I literally thought to myself, what if I do it wrong? What if I can't achieve the result that I'm looking for? I'm telling everybody out there, let it go, because it absolutely is powerful. It is something that there is no wrong way to do it. It's really what works best for you. I'm more of a breathing, short, a couple of minutes, type person. I'm not a let's sit for 30 minutes. That's not my style, but it works. So I highly encourage everyone to find what works for them. Everyone will have their own preference. So totally agree. And thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
I just want to add one thing to that. Most of us in the community call it meditation practice, not meditation perfection. I'm not sitting down to have a perfect session. I am doing a practice. We're training our mind. We're training our brain. And so it doesn't have to be perfect. So yes, let go of the idea that you can do it wrong. You're just going to get better and better as you do it.
Oh, thank you for sharing. Perfect. Talk to me about life purpose. That's a big statement, right? So tell us about your thoughts on life purpose.
Well, this goes hand in hand with what we've been talking about so far, with how we're programmed to take jobs or roles or responsibilities. What I've noticed is as women get in their 30s or in the midlife stage, they start to realize that all the things they've been doing that they thought isn't necessarily lighting them up with a sense of fulfillment. And there comes a moment where I hear a lot of my clients ask, is this all there is? Is this all I'm good for? Is this my purpose? And you'd be surprised. There are actual clinical studies that show that living with a sense of purpose, in other words, feeling that what you do matters, that you're making a difference in some way, and that can be a small way. It doesn't have to be like, solving world hunger, but feeling that you have a sense of purpose actually activates so many physiologic mechanisms from the brain to the immune system to the heart, that it is one of our longevity practices. It's one of the top traits of highly resilient people, that the feeling that you have a sense of purpose, or what the Japanese call ikigai. So it may sound like it's a luxury, but as you get older, you will realize that having that sense of purpose is essential, so that you feel a sense of fulfillment. And it's that feeling that will push you through those days where things aren't as fun, where you have to, like you were saying with the mortgage business, it's ups and downs. I mean, there's so much volatility. But if you have a strong sense of purpose, you're more likely to be able to weather those storms.
So with the strong sense of purpose, I'm trying to think of what that necessarily means, right? Because, okay, as women, one sense of purpose for some of us are our families, right? So we're raising our children, we're taking care of the family. And then of course we have our careers. And then maybe we have other things. Maybe we have nonprofit organizations we're dealing with. Maybe we're on boards of things. We're making all of these differences. So is it one thing? Is it a lot of things? Is it you're constantly searching for that thing? Like what? How will everyone necessarily go in tune with what that purpose is?
Well, there is no one size fits all, wave a magic wand and ding, you're on purpose. It's different for everyone, but what most people say is that they have a sense of a feeling of a knowing of rightness. In other words, they can get this sense that what I'm doing has a value beyond just what I'm getting paid or what it looks like on the outside. There's a sense of inner fulfillment. And yes, you may have multiple purposes at different times and throughout your lifespan. So if you're in the early stages of building a family, yes, it may be your life's purpose right now to be fully present as a parent in this nurturing environment. If you're building your career and you're in the early stages of kind of proving yourself to the world, then at that stage in your soul's journey, that might be your life purpose, is to acquire this knowledge and to demonstrate who you are. And that knowing that it may change is what I want to stress. Meaning, you might have, gone to law school, gone to med school, created whatever that is, that new business for you, and it felt so right. But we evolve. We humans evolve across the lifespan. And so you may get to a point where you're like, you know what, this is no longer lighting me up. It's no longer fulfilling me. And it may be that it's time to close out that chapter. You've had the impact that you needed to have. You've grown personally and professionally the way that you needed to. And now your sense of purpose may be shifting. And so you brought up charitable work. It may be that now you're thinking, I don't want to do this all for money or ego or looking good. I want to do something that matters to other people. So that life purpose can shift and change. And just knowing that is kind of the first step to accepting and opening your mind to it.
I love that. And thank you very much for explaining that, because that makes complete and utter sense. Is that depending on, it's funny, one time someone asked me how I would define success. And I said, well, that's such a unique thing, because success to me in my 20s meant one thing. Success to me in my 30s meant another thing. Now in my 40s, I have a different definition of success. So it's kind of the same thing, right? Is that as you evolve and as you are open to the different things. And I think, if I'm really getting the biggest message that you're sharing, and you touched on it when you went through your 5. We actually have a guide within ourselves that kind of points us into a direction of how we're feeling. And when you speak about being lit up by something, or that everything just feels right and you're kind of in the zone, right? You are in the zone that you've got it. Or the opposite, you just know something doesn't feel right. It's not right. So speak about that of, you mentioned not everybody has that, or they don't listen to it, right? Or they're not in tune enough. Because I think everyone does have it. Speak about of how do you get very in tune with that, and the power of listening to it, and kind of the journey again of getting there, because I think this is such an important topic that not a lot of people discuss. So share that.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring it up, Laura. There is this sense of intuition that I do believe, like you, I believe we all have it. We're born with it. We have a sixth sense, but you may have been trained to distrust it. For many people like myself, I have always been very sensitive. I could pick up on energies and vibes. I could read someone's body language and tell that what they're saying and what they really believe are two different things. Some people would call that being an empath. And as a young person, I heard a lot of people say, "Oh, you're so sensitive." And so this idea of being a highly sensitive person had a very negative connotation to it. And a lot of other people would tell me that they would know things, and they'd go to their parents and say, "Mom, I just totally know this, this, this." And they'd say, "Oh, that's just you and your imagination." So we're either shamed for having this sensitivity, or we're told not to trust it. And so through the course of as we're growing up, we may get these hunches. We may get a feeling or some sneaky suspicion or some kind of a download. But if you're not tuned in to trust, then you may discount it. But I do believe that we all have the capacity to start really tuning in to the heart or to the gut, wherever that comes for you. And it will lead you and guide you. It will allow you to feel more at ease with decisions that you make. And, like we said, the people that you may need to avoid, it sometimes down in your bones, but you just don't trust it until something is so blaring and obvious that you're like, okay, now I know I have to act on this. So I think that the more that you just open up to the fact that you have intuition is going to be your first step towards trusting it more. I also often invite people to journal. Like, if you have a hunch or a suspicion about something, write it down in your journal. And then write down what happens afterward. Whether you took that advice, like your gut was telling you not to do something, then you can go back in your journal and look and see, okay, what eventually happened. And if you did take that advice, does it get proven to you like, oh, I just completely avoided, some major catastrophe? That way you can start to prove it for yourself, that you're not making it up.
I love that. Absolutely. And really, it is powerful. When you can embrace it, it is powerful. All right. Well, you've given us so many nuggets, and I see some of those books back there behind you. And I want you to share some of your different material you've put together, because I think there's so many audience members that can gain value out of more than just this discussion. So can you actually share, because I do want to, although we're not speaking about the books, I want them to realize some of the things that you offer so that they can find out more information. So let's go through them.
Well, for anyone who may be challenged with low self-confidence or feeling guilty and not feeling like you love yourself, the Real Self-Love Handbook is my latest book. And it includes that 5-step process for building resilience and liberating your authentic self. It's really wonderful for healing trauma, doing that inner child work and reprogramming your subconscious mind. So I'm really proud of that book. And it's just coming out on audiobook as well for people who like to just listen on the go. And the other book that we published earlier this year is the top 10 traits of highly resilient people. And what's unique about it is not only do we tell you what the 10 traits are and give you examples on how to build those resilience muscles, we've got authors, 20 different authors from around the world, who are sharing their personal story of how they have come through challenging times and built resilience, which I think obviously right now we're in 2020 with major challenges of stress and fear and anxiety and even death. And if we needed resilience at any time in our lives, it is right now. And so this is a wonderful book that will help you to have insight about what resilience is and how to build it, but also some inspirational stories so that you can see it in action and apply it in your own life.
Awesome. And I did read the real Selflove book, and it's fabulous. I highly recommend it to everyone. We definitely were in tune, so loved it. So highly recommend. And I will check out the other one now that you had mentioned that. So thank you for sharing. I know you're big on, you've got lots of videos out there, and obviously your TED Talks, I mean, love them, just fabulous. To get up on the stage and sing, and that's wow, that was impressive. Great job. Awesome job.
Thank
you.
Tell
everyone in the audience also how to find you, how to, follow you, connect, and all of that, because I do feel, especially in the industry that I'm in, we all need to hear what you're sharing with the world. So I definitely want to encourage everyone to check that all out.
Thank you. Well, I'm on all of the social media channels except Snapchat at Dr. Andrea Pennington. And you can visit me online, andreapennington.com. And I also run a publishing and media agency for people who want to take their business out to the global marketplace. And you can find details about that at makeyourmarkglobal.com.
Awesome. Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been absolutely inspirational, and you've really provided such great information. We wish you all the best. Stay well, be safe. Talk soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Positively Charged Biz. I'm Laura Brandeo, and we are here to motivate, inspire, and support our listeners as they write their life stories. If you have an inspiring story, please email me at laura@positivelycharged.biz. And remember to subscribe to hear more great guests. And connect to us on Facebook at Positively Charged and Instagram at Positively Charged Podcast. Until next time, we wish you a positive day.